Personal genius widens the gap between stimulus and response. That's good. Somebody write that down. That's good. So that widens the gap. So we have more movement, more room, more mobility, more flexibility, more options, more choices. And then we may not be feeling great, but we feel good about, I'll figure this out. What does that mean to you? What do you believe about that? What do you understand about that? Does that give you pleasure? And so we ask many questions, meta-phenomenon questions, to have many entrances, avenues into the same thing, experience. And that's what we're doing. We're studying the structure of experience. We're modeling how an experience operates and how it works. And so while you may not want to memorize it, those may be some pages that you want to keep turning back to, until those questions and questioning itself just becomes so natural. So what is that, page 17, 18, 19, 20, something like that. The meta questions are really important, really key, and they'll drive the patterns. In fact, as we're having more people create new patterns, that's one of the requests I'm asking of them, that whatever the steps are, make sure you've got some really great questions that can guide, so that a person just asks a question, and they can invite a person into the step-by-step pieces to the experience.
So I was thinking that a strategy that I use, that other people may want to use, is when I first learned the basic NLP skills, I would take, let's say, calibration, and I would just do that until it became automatic.
Okay.
Then I'd add something else, then I'd add something else.
Good.
What I would suggest is taking maybe 3 or 4 groups of the questions, learn those, and just keep adding to them.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah.
Rather than try to memorize everything.
All of them. Yeah.
Once you know them, they're yours.
They're yours. And that's really the key for competency, that once they're yours, it's not the fact that you've memorized it, but they're yours. And so begin with a few of those questions, have 2 or 3 beginning places, and as Michael has just suggested, just keep adding until you have a quiver that you have so many, a repertoire of so many ways that you can go about something. And of course, that'll develop a sense of self-trust that I can go in and find the structure of any experience. Today, as we begin, a couple things to just mention. One announcement to mention that several have asked about. The Developers Conference, the Neurosemantic Developers Conference, will be in Hawaii this next January. So 2004, January 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's in the middle of the week. And the Developers Conference is for anybody in neurosemantics who has a master practitioner training level certificate or above. All trainers are automatically invited for it. And the reason for the Developers Conference is that the Developers Conference is a colloquium, a guided conversation over 4 days around creativity, around developing new stuff, about distributing and finding new stuff. We'll talk a lot about positioning when we're there, positioning of neurosemantics. And it's going to function as the R&D branch, as it were, of neurosemantics. Because if only 1 or 2 people are producing new things, creating new trainings, creating new models, creating new patterns, it's not going to go very far. But if lots of people have the ability to develop and to create, and I mentioned yesterday, I think we're just at the hem of the garment is what's possible. So one of the things we want to do is to facilitate that ongoing ability to develop and create a community to support that development. So once a year from January on, we're going to have a developers conference somewhere in the world, and it'll be a guided colloquium conversation. And there'll be more and more information on the Neurons group and the E-group and the website from now on until that time. But if you're wanting to be there, you don't have to have something developed or in the process of developing to come. Because we do need people who will come to be a part of the conversation. That is, people who can support by a brainstorming type of conversation the people who will be making their presentations. We'll be inviting people to come and present for 1 hour, whatever it is they're working on, or if it doesn't take that long, to make their presentation, whether it's an article that they're developing, a training, a book, a CD, whatever it is that they're developing, and to present it, and then they will have 20, 25 people who will be asking them the kind of questions that'll take them to the next level of their own development. And so that's what it's all about, and that'll be January 5 through 8, 2004, Hawaii. And Jim is helping me to get that set up, Jim Brush. And I think where did you go? You has some. He's somewhere, and he's going to help us to find a place where we're going to do that at. Once again, as you go through the processes, obviously there are outcomes you want, but once again, it's the process, it's the pattern that's more important than the outcome. So when we blow the whistle, when the coaches come around and round you up and say, back in here, you know the Genius Day. Just take a snapshot wherever you are in the process, step out cleanly, and come back. It is your chance to be interrupted effectively. So we have commissioned the coaches. Their job is to interrupt, to test your personal genius. Can you step out? And then efficiently move back here. You can always pick it up again. Can you not? And get your outcome later. And so this is going to give you skill to do that. And so we're going to be moving through these exercises. Team 1, do you have a name for your team? Does Team 1 have a name? Team 2?
No, we're making that decision.
Team 2 is still making that decision. Team 3?
Ferocious foreignness.
The what?
Ferocious foreignness.
Ferocious. Ferocious foreigners. We should have set some parameters on these names. Team 4.
Frames on the name.
Frames on the name. Team 4.
Is 5 magnificent geniuses.
The 5
magnificent
geniuses.
geniuses.
It's going to be hard to beat that team. 5 magnificent geniuses. Team 5.
Team Transcenders, that's the S, the capital S, hyphenated on either side.
Team
Transcenders.
Transcenders.
That could be read
As in trans.
different ways.
Trans. Hoppas the all will take up. Okay, the Transcenders. Team 6.
High five.
The High Five. And Team 8.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Undefined.
The undefined name. Open frame, comments, questions, experiences, things you have experienced, ahas, awarenesses in the middle of the night. Jim?
We talked a little bit this morning about some of the things, some of the skills that we might want to bring to our groups. It's very hard to make a business out of this without working together.
Okay.
And there are certain skill sets that are involved in working together as groups that sometimes in the heat of battle we forget. Who can remember, what do you need to be able to work together effectively as a group? Rapport? I'll take that one.
That helps.
Focus. What else? Acceptance. What'd you say?
Respect for the individual.
Respect for the individual.
Operating rules or parameters.
Operating rules and parameters. How do you do that?
What I would do is look at the function of the team and then create agreements or rules that support that function in communication, attendance, participation, etc.
How would you pre-frame that?
To the group?
Yes. The rules and regulations. Would you pre-frame that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Any other ideas?
Egoless
Yes.
participation.
Okay. Egoless participation.
Well, just common intentionality.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
You
Bob?
need a leader or at least someone that can, or some way of deciding differences.
Okay. One more.
Oh, sense of humor.
Sense of humor. Okay. I put these. I invite you to consider these ideas when you get together this morning. When you assemble as a group, you want to work on these skills. These are the skills that put money in your pocket. Okay. So with that in mind, I hope you make a legitimate effort to kind of pull together and see what you can do together as a team to work in and get the most you can out of it. Thank you.
Very good.
Talking about things that came to us in the middle of the night, I'm realizing that this is becoming embedded in me, the whole process here, because I was going to sleep with the song Staying Alive, at a really fast pace, and I'm laying there and it's not working for me. So I stepped back and put it there, and I did Rockabye Baby, and it stuck.
Good, good. Okay.
Every day I get up about 5 normally, and I spend a little bit of time reading the materials you've given us, and I just want to express deep gratitude because what's in this book will keep me going when I'm at home. It's not only what I'm learning here, but you've included so many extra pages in here that have the fundamentals, the foundation, the structures, and the guidance to keep this going on my own. And I appreciate deeply the thought and the effort that went into putting these books together, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
One of the things that I look at a lot is we're doing training here, learning process. We're learning some outcomes or getting some outcomes for ourselves. And a lot of it's done in a group context or at least with another person. Soon I'm going to be in an environment where there's going to be no one else that I know of with these skills. And the question is how to integrate it even more deeply so it becomes more part of me. And it isn't just left here in San Diego.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to keep coming back to that. The subject of installing, of having for our own, is something of great concern for myself, and I think it's one of our themes in neurosemantics, how to sustain it. In fact, these 4 days on Living Genius, really the theme is how do I sustain it? And yesterday we talked about sustaining it when life happens, when life hurts. And today when people irritate and obstruct. and tomorrow when business is challenging. And so the whole theme is really how we get ready to appropriate it, and we'll be coming back to that question again and again, so that by the time you leave, my hope and desire is that you'll have a sense and a confidence that even if there's nobody around who knows these skills or know these kinds of patterns, that they will have become so automatic even at that point that you can run them on yourself, but also that you're creating community. And one of the best ways to learn this stuff is to teach it. And just finding somebody who would like to access their own personal genius and start living and sustaining it and teach it to them. Because you'll learn so much by giving it out. And there will be other ways of sustaining it, but that installation is really so critical.
Michael, one thing that I learned yesterday, that this process is very flexible. It's very flexible. I was with someone who, well, we didn't go through the stages the way that they were in here. We actually went backwards and accessed resilience. And then I processed that and said, well, how did you access resilience at that time? And then went through the different stages of her resources, and then just kind of anchored them in for the next time.
Okay.
That was amazing to me, that there's another way around it. It's very flexible.
Yeah. One of the differences between the practitioner, NLP practitioner, and master practitioner is the difference between procedural and options. At the practitioner level, we become clinicians. We follow a process, step-by-step process. We learn that process so we know how it works. It's kind of like playing the piano. First you learn just to play the notes, the keys, the scales. Then you can play music. So by the master practitioner level, we know the scales. We know the pieces, the elements, the variables of a human experience, the thoughts, the emotions, the submodalities, the metaprograms. We know the pieces that we're playing with. Now we can start playing and making music with it. So at the practitioner level, we say, follow the process. And even here, the first thing to do, we usually say, just follow the process. Just get the process down at least once. Then start having that freedom and that options. This will be more challenging if your metaprogram is a procedural metaprogram. It'll be challenging you to break the rules. Every once in a while at a training like this, somebody will say, well, don't tell Michael that I didn't follow the pattern. It's okay. If you're getting the outcome, it's okay. Now, if you don't know how to follow the rule, now that may be the challenge and the stretch and the growth for you, to follow some rules. So that you have both options. You can follow a procedure, because if you're so option-oriented you can't follow a procedure, then you're pretty stuck and limited. So having both options. But as we move more into the master practitioner, to master anything now is to get free from the constraints to see what else can I do with this? What else can I do with this? And with your outcome in mind and facilitating the person, getting rapport and learning how they work, their metaprograms, their processes, and then adjusting ourselves. So the more we do that, then the more skill and excellence, competency we have. So that's the dance we dance between following a procedure and then knowing when and how to step out of it and to do something that's even more necessary. Yesterday, we started with 4 patterns. 4 patterns that was under the frame of you've got your personal genius, you've got the ability to step into a state of focus and engagement and to be passionate about something and just to let the world go away and time go away and self go away and to trust that if something needs to interrupt me, it can interrupt me and I can handle that. I can just step out, that's fine. And I can be in another genius state, another state of focus and flow. And now with this, we're ready to turn loose. But sometimes when we go out into the world, sometimes things happen, sometimes traumas and hurts and disappointments, sometimes things don't go the way we want them to. And so we suggested 4 states of excellence, states of mastery, powerful states, meta states, that would help you that even when things aren't going well, you can maintain, you can sustain that genius state and step into and be true to your passion so that you can persevere, so that you can stay with it, so that you can go through barriers, around barriers, break through, break around, whatever it takes, so that you can stay with it. Most of us have heard statistics from Einstein or Edison who said that 99% of genius is perspiration and 1 is inspiration. That it's staying with it. It's staying with it. That's what we found with the wealth building. That most of the self-made millionaires they did not go after the get-rich-quick processes, and they did not get rich quick. But they just stayed with a passion. They stayed with a passion, and after 10 years, they became masters. They became experts. They were so valuable, they knew it. And if they lost everything, they knew that I'll just go out tomorrow and do it again. And so it's one of the wonderful things about mastery, that ability to stay with something. So what were those 4 states? Optimism was the 3rd one. Resilience was the 4th one. Proactivity was the 1st. Responsibility 4 and 2. So we picked up these 4. Let me just play for a moment with how does proactivity serve and empower and sustain your personal genius, your focus states. What does proactivity now mean when you bring proactivity there? How is that going to support and enhance and enrich and empower?
Allows experimentation.
Now you can experiment. And now you can take the initiative to experiment. Because if something disrupts it, if something doesn't go right, no big deal. And we've got an NLP presupposition that supports that. What is the presupposition that supports that? That we can experiment No failure. So here's these presuppositions that are belief and frames that can support that initiative. Think about initiative, taking an initiative. Is there an initiative you need to take with something that you care about, love about, want to experience some initiative? Do you feel that you have that power to experiment, take that initiative? Proactivity. What else would proactivity do to support personal genius when you're proactive?
It empowers you.
Okay.
When
It
I'm
empowers us.
proactive,
How?
I'll give you just an example. Last week, Kevin and I had way too long of a lunch, so I came back in, and instead of getting the evil eye like the previous long lunch, I was just very proactive about it and just went up and said, you know I took an extra hour. Do you want me to just handle phones an hour late? You know, rather than... So it was just, it empowered me because I took a proactive state rather than a reactive state, waiting for the other shoe
to make an adjustment quicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Support me in handling my non-supportive reactions.
Okay, so it's supporting you in your non-supportive reactions.
Yeah, let's say anger or, for instance, reactivity, that kind of thing. So it makes me more of an stance with equanimity and wisdom instead of going reactive and losing my mind in whatever.
Going reactive and losing my mind.
Whatever emotion, whatever emotion could be cut off with. So that would be the sense.
Okay. So proactivity, just the fact that it stops the reactivity. Just the fact that we stop just reacting. So it's counter-reactive, because we're taking the initiative.
One thing that comes to mind for me is that unless we have the ability to always choose to explore that which we're curious about, we'll never be able to express our genius in that, because we have to take risks to get real-world feedback to develop an understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I was looking for, taking risks. If you were to gauge from 0 to 10, how much of a risk taker? How comfortable do you feel taking risks? Or do you play it safe? Here's a contrast, I think, in terms of personal genius or mastery. People who master things tend to just take a lot of risks, and they don't tend to play it safe. That's not their filter of how can I protect myself, how can I stay safe, because they feel safe inside. There's a sense of I trust myself, and I can take a risk. And if I fall on my face, I bounce back. And so the risk-taking thing. Who's got the mic? Okay. Go to Mark first.
I noticed with the risk-taking, recently I was watching on the Travel Channel the poker tournaments that were going on, and the guys that were at the top table, they would interview them and they'd ask them different questions, and one of the main things was that they said that they were willing to take the risk, and you could watch it in their betting because they would say all in. They kept saying all, where the other guys that played it safe would be like, well, maybe a little bit here. Before you know it, their money would be down and they'd be out. But the guys that either went all in and then get up and they'd go and they say, well, next time. They just let it go. But it was always all in for the risk taking.
Okay. Let's go over to Mike.
My experience, because I've done some studies of great men, is that risk-taking is very context-specific. That they will take a risk in an area of their expertise of their life. There's other areas of their life that they're not risk-takers.
Okay.
So it's like they've got a grounding. My term is they've got a grounding. They've got a support system, and they focus their risk. They're not risk-takers across the board.
Okay.
It's only in the area of what they consider their expertise.
Okay. In their genius state.
Exactly right.
In their genius state, they can take that risk. Let's come over to Sterling first.
Two things, just to follow up on what Michael said in terms of the risk taking. I've done some reading on it as well, and it's also I guess my term for it would be it's a calculated risk. I mean, they don't just run willy-nilly, blindly into it. You don't just dive off without gauging how deep the pool is. They do the homework first. They calculate
that initiative again, that proactivity again,
and then that after they're analyzing it, then they take the risk, then they go ahead and take the risk. And I think that was the thing I wanted to talk about in terms of what the being proactive does. It allows you, in addition to taking a calculated risk, to go out and meet the challenge and not wait for it to come to you, but to see it on the horizon, to open the gates and to go out and meet it, to bring it in.
So test your matrix, the matrix of your mind, the matrix of your genius, your focus states, your sense of self, to take the initiative, to be proactive, to not be reactive, your sense of you're that kind of person. Check your power matrix. Do you have the power to take risks, to study, to have those awarenesses as what risk to take? That power matrix, and the state. What states do you need to be able to live that way instead of living by always playing it safe and worrying about how you could be in danger?
One of the things that had dawned on me as we're talking about proactivity is there's even a place, and I'll call it a space, before the reaction or before we do something, and it's that neutral space, that clear space, and that seems to me an important part of this.
Okay, that's part of proactivity. Yesterday we talked about responsibility 2 and 4. How does that support your personal genius? Responsibility 4 and 2. And as you think about that, do you have a strong, vigorous, robust sense of what I'm responsible for and feel good about that? It's interesting that in most of our cultures, being responsible is not attached with great feelings. But what we want to do is to attach feel really excited about being able for what we have to offer, and also responsible too, and looking for those relationships that will support our personal genius.
Okay, I just want to comment what was said earlier about following format and then following your instinct and taking risk. Now, some of the clients I've been engaged in, I didn't know whether I could help or not. So I would research it and act as if I knew. And if I brought that across to my client and I seen a response, then I continued it and build my confidence, and I was able to get the results.
Yeah. Okay. Yesterday we added optimism, and a special form of optimism. That is, when something bad happens, I'm not going to bring it in by personalizing it, making it permanent, making it pervasive. And notice how that supports your personal genius, so that things happen, but we can keep them out there and then take our resources to deal with them. Instead of giving it the meanings, it's about me. It's forever, it's pervasive. And so here's another thing, that as we bring this and set this as a frame for our personal genius, we're more, once again, it frees us up. It frees us up to go explore, to experiment, to try, and if something doesn't work, we'll just try something else, because we keep it out there. And by keeping it out there, we create what we call in psychology psychological distance, or that neutral space, that moment where I can have presence of mind to think. Because when it's too close and too personal, then we have defensive reactions. So by keeping it out, then we can start adding what frames do I need to have so I can have a solution-oriented focus and be looking for, how can I make it better? What do I need? Those are some of the most powerful questions, and if there's any questions to memorize and just bathe yourself in, I would really recommend them. If anything happens, instead of, well, what's the problem, ask, what's the solution? And that presupposes, framed by implication, there's a solution to everything. Do you believe that? There's a solution. What a presupposition. There's a solution to everything. And what if you believe the solution to everything is usually in the problem? Then you can welcome and embrace the problem to find the hidden solution inside. And it's just an attitude that creates the ability to not fight with the world, but to play and to dance with it. Because as we'll do tomorrow when we look at opportunities, most opportunities appear as problems. And if you've got a negative attitude, a pessimistic attitude, a problem-oriented attitude, a where did this come from, why did this happen to me attitude, then it's a problem. But if you're going, there is an opportunity here. So we come into a hotel and we don't get good customer service. And if your attitude is, somebody needs some training, opportunity. And so this is the difference. That makes a difference, and as Jim said earlier, puts money in your pocket. So how we look at things, and so that's that optimism. And it's not just thinking positive. The counterintuitive thing is that we welcome the very thing that could irritate, and we create the pearl out of it. And so that's that paradox there. And then yesterday we ended with resilience, and of course this is obvious how this plays and supports our personal genius. We just keep bouncing back. And I don't know if the story is true, but I've heard it from many times. I've never seen any references to it. But Edison is supposed to have, when his factory burned down, when the whole factory was burning down, he just got so excited and he hollered for Martha, his wife, to come to look at the fire. I mean, what an attitude! It was he knew he was going to have a new factory. And so I'm not saying that I have all of this yet, but I'm working on just adding and layering this so that I can have that kind of an attitude of resilience. And having that sense, because when you have that feeling in your muscles, nothing will knock me down to where I'll stay down. Knock me down, I'm back. Knock me down, I'm back. Because I know that it's not about me, it's not about everything, it's not forever. And that I can use whatever happens to me. It's not that it happened for a purpose. That's not my opinion. I don't think it happened for a purpose, but I think I can take anything and turn it into something useful. And it may take a little time to create that bounce back, but that bounce back is possible. Other thoughts and feelings? That's where we were up to yesterday, and now we're going to move to the next challenge. The next challenge is page 43 in your manuals, page 43, when people irritate and obstruct. Anybody ever have that problem? It's like you're in a great state, and you've got a vision, and you can be so focused, and then you get all these naysayers, and especially if you live with them, or you work with them, or they're just constantly around. So people, and how people play a role in our personal genius. Charlie Brown says, here, take this. Now don't be suspicious. And Charlie Brown says, what a dog, as Snoopy is chomping and chomping. He says, he's getting so he doesn't trust anyone. He'd make a good human being. So people and how that they can get in our way. So all of the patterns today, and this is bullet point number 2, then there are the people who influence and affect our personal genius. People difficult to get along with, people with different meta programs, people conflict with us, give us hell, interrupt us, interfere with our plans, don't come through on promises, betray loyalties, people who are incongruent, people who are not authentic, there's a typo, who scheme and plan, have negative agendas. How do we handle them? How do we handle ourselves as we handle them? So today, our whole focus will be upon ourselves and building up a matrix of our mind so that it'll support us staying in relationship or creating and finding the kind of relationships, the kind of colleague associations and relationships and community so that we can take that into the world and not let people dampen the fires of our passion. As well as, my belief is this, that I can do so much more with you, I can do so much more with friends and colleagues and associates than alone. And those of you who know the story of Bob and I have done so much more with Bob, and I think he can say the same thing with his association with me. We wrote 4 books before we ever met, just by email. And we were on the phone to each other, and after 4 books, he was going to come to Colorado because we were going to come to California, to Santa Cruz, to the Vision Leadership training that Robert Dilts had a number of years ago, and he was going to fly to Grand Junction. We were going to drive out here. And I said, by the way, what do you look like? Send me a picture through the email so I can know who to pick up. But since then, the association of having someone who supports your genius, who's a friend to your excitements, and how can I support someone else's genius and excellence and create that, so that instead of conflict, there's cooperation, there's collaboration. I really believe that's been a missing thing in NLP, and it's one of the things I'm wanting to work on here today. That the whole theme of today is when people, because no matter how close a relationship you have with somebody and how much collaboration, there's always friction. So what do I do then? What are the frames I need? What are the states I need? How can I texture my states so that I can be at my best? And you can see the states, the 6 that we have here. We're going to do 4 of these as a group. Uninsultability and magnanimity. Uninsultability is this ability to stop taking insult and making things personal and just being uninsultable. Because the more things you do, the more insults you'll get. When I first started writing, I was really surprised that out of the NLP community, I'd have a lot of articles written against me and telling me, doing a lot of mind reading about my motives and intentions and this and that. And at first, I took some insult to that. At first, that kind of hurt my feelings. Now I know it's PR. They're talking about me. I'm on their mind. Rent-free. So uninsultability. We want to get to the place where we can be uninsultable. Taking feedback, but without taking it personal and insult. Because we always need feedback. So the last one there is giving and receiving feedback. Feedback is not only the breakfast of champions. Feedback is what allows me to move it to the next level. And I've set my goal each and every year. I'm going to become 5% better each year as a writer, 5% better as a trainer, 5% better in some of the things that I care about. I'm going to get better. But if I don't know what I need to work on and improve on, then what's going to be pulling me? What am I going to work on? And what's going to challenge me and stretch me? So I need to know my inadequacies. So what state of mind do I need to be okay with my inadequacies, my fallibilities, the things I'm not so skilled at? How can I rest at peace with that, be okay with that, and be growing? So how can I be gloriously fallible? Because that's one of the states we want to create. I think humor. So the 5th meta-stating we're going to do, and Sterling has worn a shirt here today, funny is as funny does. I like that. Because we want to metastate ourselves with some humor so we can laugh at ourselves. Gloriously fallible. Fallible with dignity. So we fall on our face with dignity. Instead of shame, humiliation, embarrassment, that we welcome those as we're just human. That we're always just human. And so we can lighten up with humor. So one of the patterns I want to do today is to meditate ourselves with humor so we can lighten up and stop taking ourselves so serious. One of the presuppositions on the wall here that I've added is when you get serious, you get stupid. So that as we lighten up and take ourselves lighter, one of the things I think is a danger is as we take ourselves serious, then we can get arrogant, we can get into states where we're not open to new learnings or correctable. So we'll meditate with humor and giving and receiving feedback. And magnanimity. Magnanimity is a word that means big-hearted. Magnanimity, big-hearted. And that brings tolerance, and that brings acceptance, and that brings the ability to be at ease and have an easier, gracious kind of relationship. So while we can push and demand things, it's not in a judgmental way. So these are some of the states that we're going to play with as we meditate ourselves so that the irritations and the upsetness and the obstructions and the grumpiness of other people will not undermine our effectiveness. So that's what we're going to be working on today as we move through our processes. Before we do that, we're going to go to the groups. So 15 minutes in our groups, and then we'll come back here to deal with Living Genius in that way. Page 44 starts talking about insults, comments, criticisms that hurt our feelings. And one of the lines there at the very top, one of the bullet points, talks about uninsultability, eliminating the black hole of criticism. Have you ever felt that black hole of criticism? That it feels like it just reaches in and just pulls everything of value and worth out. And it feels like it violates us. It feels like it goes to the core. Sometimes a word, a phrase, a tone, a gesture, a glance, and it can be, in that sense, so hurting. So how do we do that? I mean, what a skill. Here we are just minding our business, and a word, a symbol, or a gesture, or a movement somehow gets so deeply into us that it can really hurt and violate us. So I want to do this pattern in 2 steps, 2 stages. And the first stage is, first of all, eliciting your strategy for taking insult. Everybody's got that skill? You can take insult. Well, we learn it because as we grow up, we don't have good ego boundaries. And things just hit us. And that's why children are so reactive. They don't have that moment of pause to where they can think because everything hits them and they react so quickly. And so one child sticks their tongue out at another child, and he says, I just had to hit her because she stuck her tongue out at me. And it made sense. And as we develop ego strength, we can keep things out. We can keep that sense of psychological distance. And so, first of all, let's explore the strategy of how we take insult. So we'll do that by just doing a strategy elicitation of some referent event, and then we'll be checking for certain features of that event. Who has had that ability? Whether you have it now or not doesn't matter. But who has had that ability or has that ability to take insult?
In what way?
Anyway. Anyway, I don't care how you do it. But you can feel bad by what people say or do, or their gestures. And who has or does have a good case of it? I mean, a raging, flaming case, or had. You had. Who has a pretty good case now? Who can still do that pretty well? Need to work with it. Okay. Have you been up? Okay. Ray's been up. Who has not been up? Because I want to give you a chance if you haven't been up. And I'm just going to elicit the strategy. Okay. So think about some time or someplace somebody said something and it really hurt your feelings. You got a reference event like that.
Uh-huh.
So how did you do that?
Well, first of all, I look at the guy and say, well, what's your problem? And he just keep raising the voice and insulting me. And of course I answer the same way. Okay. I know how to do that also.
So you responded in
kind. And then I say, well, let me tell you what it was. I was driving and he got into the wrong way and he wanted me to back up and I was almost at the way I had to turn and he came back up a little bit and keep driving, and he got mad and said, well, you know what? Go to hell. Turn it off the car and walk away. He was mad with me. He tried to get physical. So, that's fine.
Okay.
He keeps yelling at me, say, well, you goddamn son of a bitch. In Spanish? Well, maybe everybody knows those bad words.
Okay. So this was a very intense.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have to call the cops. I called the cops because he was the one that he was wrong, and I just was about probably where he's standing up from the corner. He just wanna go first because he's a taxi driver.
Okay. Okay.
Then we yell a lot, and finally say, well, go to hell, turn it off, and walk away.
Okay. So this is an instance where it could have gotten really physical.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And you were very reactive at the very beginning when it all started before it escalated to that level.
Well, I wasn't worried about it. It was my son with me, and I was myself, and my son is a black belt. He will take care of the guy. I wasn't worried about it.
So the very first stimulus, the very first thing that happened, what was the very first thing that happened that started it in this pathway?
Well, he made remarks about my mother, probably some of the ones that know Spanish, that in Mexico, the worst insult that can give it to you is insult your mother.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
Is that the very first thing he said?
Yeah.
Before anything else happened?
Yeah, I said, hijo de la chica. Son of a bitch, you just get out of the way. Sorry? And then he just kept going. Say,
okay.
Well, thanks, bro.
So what did that mean to you?
That's the way I answered. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
He was insulting my mother. Well, thanks, brother.
So even though you responded that way, what was going on inside? What did that mean to you?
I was kind of mad and at the same time laughing about the guy.
Okay. So at first you were both mad and there was some humor in it.
That's right.
Okay.
And later on I was just humor. I mean, I wasn't mad anymore.
So at first there was mad. What were you mad about? What were you angry?
Well, because like I say, it's a cultural thing that they start telling you things about your mom.
So where did your mind go? I want to go inside now.
Oh my God! Just to get him. That's exactly get him.
All right. So you're in a state, and that's the expression of the state. I want to know the frames that drive the state, because something feels violated. Because that's what anger is. Anger is a sense that something important to you is violated.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to that, say, just that quick. Just with the word?
Just with the word, and also the same thing about that he was coming on the wrong way. He was violating the traffic signals. And I think I was right. He was wrong on that, and he was to use my right and then also insulting me.
Okay.
That's what I was mad on.
So that sounds like the first thing that happened,
mm-hmm.
that there was a right and wrong. You were right, he was wrong, but he was saying you were wrong, and it was that...
No, he wasn't thinking that he was right. He was thinking that he was, because he's a taxi driver, he has more powerful, and he has the power to do whatever they feel like to do, and whenever they want to do that.
Okay. So what did that mean to you? Let's say all that's true. Let's say he felt more powerful, he felt like he had the right to do anything. What does that mean to you? How do you think about that?
It doesn't really mean anything to me. Yes, that I want to pass because I have to go. I didn't care about if he's powerful or not. I mean...
Okay. Were you in a hurry?
Well, my kid has to go to class at Taekwondo. We had about 15 minutes. So we have time. That's what I thought. Well, if he doesn't want to move, I just turn it off the car and walk away. When he saw that, I said, oh, okay. Let me back and you just get through.
Okay. So here's an event that occurred out there, and it sounds like you brought it in. You brought it in, made it personal.
Yes.
So the words he was saying, you took them as if he was saying about your mother.
That's right.
Okay, instead of keeping them out. Your sense of self, how did you experience your sense of you in that process?
I felt okay. I felt powerful because even if he say things about my mother, and when I start playing with him, it was the other way around. I was the one that had the power, not him.
Okay, so that seemed to be one of the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Who has the power?
At that moment, that particular moment, it was.
Okay. What else? What else was going on for you?
Not much, because of course I know how to say things. I answered the same way and worse. He got surprised.
So it immediately started escalating.
It started escalating, and the insulted one is insulting the other guy. But at the beginning, he got me right there, okay?
Okay.
After that, I took control of the situation, and I was the one getting the guy.
Okay. So where we are so far is looking at how a person does this. We've got the referent experience, and we're checking out things about boundaries. That's one of the first things. Because this was not kept out there. This was brought in and made personal. Sense of self and how you experience yourself, and what definitions, in this instance, is power, and then the escalation just runs there. The lack of strong sense of values or visions. When we talk about that, is really, how did this affect your sense of how you behave in a situation like that? Were you proud of yourself?
No, because first of all, even though my kid is already was
watching all this.
Watching all this, he's 13. He's in high school.
Okay.
He's not really will be new something for him, but I don't think that should be doing this. And after that, say, well, should I be doing this with a taxi driver?
Okay.
I mean, I think almost everywhere the taxi drivers are well known to be a little bit rude.
Okay.
Most of them, not all, okay?
Okay.
That's why I feel, say, well, I don't think I should be doing this.
So my guess is that there were values that you were defending, not to be treated this way, and then there were other values that felt like maybe you were even violating some of your own values, treating someone else back the way that they had just treated you, and what you were demonstrating for your son, and some vision. So that's some of the things we're checking for, just some of the features. And in this one, the first one, I don't think really matters that much here, caring about what other people think. Did you really care what he thought about you?
No, because I never see that guy again.
Yeah. So that one doesn't have effect there. In design engineering, a metastate structure of uninsultability that would have been effective in that instance, then we go through, and there's 4 things mentioned here. There may be some other ones, but the first one is boundaries. So how do you do boundaries when you have a good sense of boundaries? That is, you can hold something out. And a boundary is not a wall that nothing can penetrate, but it's a boundary.
It's a line that you just set up, like, I don't go, they don't come in.
Yeah.
Well, I know my boundary was there. I won't get into physical. Okay. I won't do that.
Okay.
I mean, the best thing, I turn it off the car, set the car and go, even if I have to run, right?
Okay. So what about a mental and emotional boundary, so that even if people say words that punch buttons, like your mother, something about your mother or being a son of a bitch or whatever it is, if you can keep that out there so that those are his words?
It could be possible. I also play soccer. And that's very common, okay? You just provoke the other guys, or they provoke you, and I mean, that's,
to rattle them.
It's a rattle there, but you just put a boundary here. This one was a different case.
Yeah.
The soccer, you know that it's a game, and they're going to tell you, and you're going to tell them, you know that it's...
So you know that's part of the...
That's part of the show, okay, put it that way. But in this one was for real, and I think I abused the poor guy at the long run.
Okay. So there's other times and places in your life where you can have a boundary, and people can say those same kind of words, and they don't get in. And you can stay proactive rather than reactive.
Yes.
So we can. So designing a boundary so that you have that moment to think and experience it. A sense of self. Do you have a strong and unconditional sense of your core self that you can operate being really centered? How centered were you in that event?
At the beginning was mad, okay. Was really mad, and after that I thought about it, say, well, I can manage this guy. That's when I was centered and I was making him mad.
Okay.
Till finally he back out.
Okay.
Yeah, but the first thought was...
Yeah. So at first it threw you off balance?
Yes, and after that, after a few seconds, I say, well, I don't think I should be doing this.
Okay. What are some of the beliefs that would be an empowering belief about that situation? Something that would keep you resourceful, focused, clear, calm, not punching your buttons.
Okay, first of all, well, even if my son is a black belt in Taekwondo, I don't think that...
Yeah.
No, I mean, he's a 13-year-old. I mean, still a teenager. Is not that old, even though he's taller than me. But I don't think that will be a good example to do that, even if he can do it, or even if I get into the physical and I will need help, he will get into, but that's what I thought about that moment.
So rather than even thinking about resources for that, what would be resources for not even getting there? Beliefs that you would have about external things that would support you not to take the bait and get angry, get upset, or want to return, respond in kind.
Okay, with that guy was hard to do because I had cars on both sides. I didn't have any resource and was a long block that I had to back out. The easy part was that, and probably the other one was call the cops, what I did.
Okay. We'll go through a menu list in a little bit, but I just want to plant this question right now. What beliefs about external things would really support you? Because as we have more and more beliefs about that, and sometimes just that very thing there, just letting police handle that kind of thing.
Well, one of the beliefs is that I was on the side of the law. The other guy was the outlaw. That's what my belief. I mean, I can, if I were on the other side, probably get back. But no, I was on the right side. Okay. And there is no way that I can move around because the street, my other resource could be getting to the sidewalk, but I couldn't be able to pass.
So what you're thinking about now is what to do. And the distinction I'm trying to make is the distinction between the expression of a state, what to do, versus the state to be in. Because oftentimes we try to figure out what to do before we're in the right state. And if we're acting out of the wrong state or the less than resourceful state, then our actions will be less than resourceful. So the first question, before we ask, what could I do about it? Because like we've been talking about, sometimes we're in the wrong place. The kind of thinking that creates the problem, that kind of thinking can't come up with a good response. It can only come up with the response it has. So the first, and that's why as we design engineer a great state to be in, then we will have new and different kind of responses. So at this point, I want to stop, and we'll come back in a little bit and finish this. But before we do that, to spend a little time design engineering. Now what I've got in the next couple pages are lots of resources. So on page 45, there's a list on question number 2, statement number 2 there, about resources, things to do on the inside. And then on the next page, page 46, a menu list supporting frames for uninstallability, and then a menu list of resources for uninstallability. So the first is a set of frames for uninstallability. Like, what anyone says to me is not mine. I don't have to immediately believe it. I can just perceive it and notice where it comes from, what it's about. Frames for taking criticism might be when a fool is annoyed, he quickly lets it know. Smart people ignore an insult. Or a gentleman will not insult me, and no man who is not a gentleman can insult me. And so you can just read those frames, and that's what we're looking for, empowering beliefs. And as you move on down through the list, there's just resource after resource after resource. And what I would recommend is pick 3. Pick 3 resources that would be the most crucial, critical ones for you that would put you in the best kind of mental, emotional space. And before you decide what to do, be in the best place. Now, it may be separating yourself from that information. It may be creating psychological distance. It may be non-personalizing. It may be owning your power zone. It may be appreciating the person of the critic. It may be, and you can just see all the different things through there. So this is where we'll take a moment to gather the 3 most critical resources for you. And this is where we don't impose on each other. We can just say, this is what would work for me. What works best for you? What's the most important, most critical resource that you need as a belief, so that in that kind of context you can just stay, because the objective is to stay centered, focused, clear, calm, with all the button pushing, all the insults, all the invitations and seductions to reactivity. How to stay calm. What would you need to be thinking and feeling so that you could feel that good and that less reactive.
How do you do when the person? How do you do when the person you're with becomes violent and wants to punch you, for instance?
Okay, let me put that apart from everything we're doing here, because that's a whole other strategy. Because what we're talking about is not taking insult when someone is just insulting. When the context is different, when we're in a context of violence, it's a whole different strategy. So, and that's sometimes where we mix things up, and it's not the same. I went to Houston, Texas, and did diffusing hotheads, the training that we have here. And every day, for 4 or 5 days, they would bring in 35 policemen with their supervisors, and I would do this diffusing hotheads for 8 hours. The next day, they would bring in 35 more. And it's diffusing hotheads. That is, how to talk someone down so you don't need to use violence or police, in their case, police action. Well, they kept saying, it won't work here. It won't work here. It wouldn't work with bank robbery. It wouldn't work with this. I know. If it comes to that, you know what to do. I'm not here to tell you how to do police work. If it comes to that, you know what to do. But if you want skills for diffusing the hothead so you don't have to use police action, and I said that so many times. Finally, I just wrote across the whole whiteboard, you know, how to talk someone down from a hot, irritable, distressed, stressed out, angry state so that you don't have to use your police action. I just kept going. That's our frame. Now, where could you use that? And of course, I was actually called in to do it among themselves. I mean, that's what I was called in. That's what I was called in to do it among themselves. And but that was too personal for them. So he said, okay, domestic violence. If go in there. Yes, you could go in there and arrest everybody, but why don't we just see if we can talk them down first? So same kind of a thing. This is not about violence. It's about before it escalates, so that we don't even start the escalation.
Well, I think this won't work. We'll end up in violence.
All right, let's go home. So we want to keep this in the context. Now this particular example gets close to that border. In fact, just as you were starting, I was thinking maybe we should change the very referent because it gets so close to there. But still, if you could be in a state to where the person is not even, you're not responding in kind, then it doesn't even go in that direction. And that's really what we want, the ability to not get our buttons pushed.
Well, that's what I think.
So what we want to do, pair off, identify some of the features for yourself, how you get seduced into responding in kind or doing something that makes it worse. Because once you start that pathway of how to make it worse and it starts escalating, it's going in the wrong direction. So find out, what do you need in terms of boundaries? What do you need in terms of sense of self? What do you need in terms of supporting beliefs? What do you need in terms of beliefs about those external events? We will add those, and then we'll do the pattern for meditating ourselves with those resources so that we can be in a place, and we take, and the way we respond and take it in a new direction instead of the other direction.
About the process, because the second part of it I didn't really understand, because I got the idea that you were looking for a reference experience where you were insulted, but did not.
So on page 44, there's 2 sections there.
Yeah.
Elicit your strategy for taking insult, then design engineer a meta-state structure of uninsultability.
Yeah. That was the second part that you did.
Yeah. So, well, this is what we're going to do right now.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll go to the next page, and we will meta-state what you come up with. I want to give you time to design engineer. And so the questions here is, what do you need? What do you need for boundaries? What do you need for sense of self? What do you need for beliefs? What do you need for state? What do you need? Once you go and find it, then we'll come back, and then I'll do the process.
And do you then, in the second part, do you then look for take a reference experience where you could have been insulted but weren't?
I would say find reference events for good boundaries.
Yeah, for good boundaries. Okay.
Whether it's an insult situation or not. Find a reference event for feeling, having a good sense of self. So the second part doesn't need to be in reference to any kind of an insult. Let's bring the mic up to Mike.
I just want to make sure I understand the process. We're going to have the person find a reference experience where they're insulted and kind of question that and find out what's going on. Then the second part is just find an experience where they have good boundaries.
Yeah, good boundaries.
Just stop there.
Good sense of self, good beliefs that support a state.
Okay.
And that's where the other pages will give you a lot more menu list. And then we'll come, so we're not going to do the pattern yet.
Okay.
When we come back, then we'll do the pattern. So it'll be in 2 parts, and page 44 is the first part for these 2 facets. Now we did that to some extent with the power zone and responsibility 2 and 4, and so you can then bring that awareness and have a sense, maybe even gesture, and a sense of space, a sense of boundaries to keep things out. That'll then give us the moment to think and to feel, so we don't react. And as we have that moment to react, then we can get centered in a sense of self-appreciation, self-esteem, so that our dignity is not on the line. We keep the dignity off the line. What we did yesterday about optimism, it's not about me. So once again, we're pushing something out. It's not about me. Even if they're using my name in vain, it's still not about me. It's about the communication. It's about the interaction. It's about something else. Then what other resources would you like to have so that you can be in a good place, calm, caring, compassionate, centered. So we've got a few of these things written here for uninsultability. Those tend to be fairly common for most of us. And you may have some other things that you'll want to add to your list, your menu list. So some of the states, some of the resources we've been building up would be the beginning of it all. So let me have you access the state of your power zone, because you've accessed your power zone a number of times here, and in that sense that you have the power and you own the power to think and to feel and to say and to do. And as you do that, then yesterday we took that power zone as we owned it, and we made that distinction, mine and then not me. So being responsible for self and to others. And so setting them there and letting that, I like turning that into an energy bubble. I like turning that into kind of a space to be that's my space, that really nobody else can enter. Not with their words, unless I open up my ego boundaries, it's out there.
Okay.
And then one of the beliefs I believe is nobody can make me. Every response, every reaction is mine. So no matter how insulting or how it might want to recruit me, it's still theirs, it's not mine. And every response I have is mine. Then the question becomes, what would be the resources that would enable you to just be at your best?
In a case like this, first of all, myself, my ego.
Okay.
Second, the calm.
Okay,
calm. The calm. Control of myself.
Okay. Control of self.
In a case like this, that's what you need. And and attention. I'll be 100% paying attention to what's going on.
Okay.
Was the case that they get physical, okay?
Okay. So you've listed 4 things, and when you talk about ego, I guess a good, strong ego strength, or is that more a sense of...
It's ego strength. Ego strength and appreciation of myself.
Okay.
That I'm...
Okay.
And I'm a strong person, but also I appreciate myself as a person, as a human being.
Access that. Just take that on. You know how to do that one? Okay, to appreciate self and have that sense that I can face this. The ego strength whatever it is. Okay, so if you were to gauge how much you have that right now, 0 to 10.
Say 9.
Okay, so good, strong sense of that sense of self and appreciation of self. How calm are you right now?
Very calm.
Okay, so notice the calmness, notice the breath, notice the eyes of calmness, the mind of calmness. My guess is with calmness comes that presence of mind so that you can pay attention. So bring that sense of paying attention, being present, being in sensory awareness to whatever is out there. Okay, and then that sense of controlling self. You had mentioned that.
Yes.
How do you know when you are in control of your own mind, emotions, speech, and behavior?
Well, I can know when somebody's trying to tell me things, I just ignore it, okay?
Okay.
Or answer and just put it down, whatever, but kind of ignore the whatever they say.
Okay. So, in control of self, or self-control, that mastery of self, mastering how you're going to think about it, mastering how you're going to feel about it, what you'll say and do. Imagine a time when you were just really in total control of yourself, that your responses were guided one and directed one and from your intentions. Okay, so we've got 4 things: a strong sense of self, appreciation of self, calmness, presence of mind, paying attention, and then that sense of self-control. So be in that state now, and let's just run a movie. Being in that state, driving in that state, taking your son to school, and something like that happens, and you don't need to say anything about it, but just feeling all of that, take that and notice how it would play out differently with that old event. And how does that feel?
Good.
Okay. Okay. Would you like to have this and keep this?
Well, I have it right here. You cannot take it away.
Cannot take it away.
No.
It really is yours.
Well, of course it's mine.
Of course it's yours. Of all these NLP presuppositions, some of them probably would be a nice support. That is, a belief that would support this, that would enable you to. So, which NLP presupposition or other empowering belief would just really support you having this, keeping this, that this is yours?
When people have all the resources they need to be effective, they only need the chance to access and develop their inner resources.
Okay.
That's what I think would apply in this case.
Okay, so that would be a good one that would really support what you have as you think about, if I'm operating from this state, I can have that. People have all the resources. I have all the resources I need to really handle this. Do you believe that?
Yes.
Okay, so you already believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's apply that to all of this to lock that in place. Is this enough to handle that efficiently?
I think so.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add to it that make it even more robust and powerful? So that there's just no chance of getting your buttons pushed. That you can really stay uninsultable. And just deal with it for whatever it is.
I think that would be enough.
Enough for that. Okay. So the executive part of your mind, the part of your mind that makes decisions about where to go, what to do, how to do, who to be, how to behave. The executive part of your mind, is it willing to remind you of all this?
Yes.
And to let it be available to you when you need it in the world when things like this happen? So you can just step there and be there?
Yes.
Okay, so it's willing. Are you fully aligned with all of this?
Mm-hmm.
No part objects or is afraid of it?
No.
Okay, so it serves you well. Who would you be? Who would you become? And you can answer this out loud, or you can just know this inside. How would it affect your self-definition if this is the kind of person you are when you move through the world?
Well, after the many years living in that type of situation, that is very common. You get insulted and you insult people. I think that you got a time when you just want to calm down, forget about it, and ignore the situation.
So with all those resources and being able to keep it out and just staying really resourceful when that happens, and however you respond, probably now with calmness, with more appropriateness, non-escalating, things like that, as you do that, will that affect your sense of self?
Of course not. I'm gonna be the same person.
Okay. So it's not going to create a new self-definition.
No.
It's just going to be who you have decided to be
It's
anyway.
will empower that definition.
Okay. Okay. So notice how that feels. Okay.
Don't say anything,
Now, of course, everybody here is now commissioned to test this to see if you really are
unsolvable. Juan will do that.
We'll let Juan test you fully and completely. Well, give him a hand. Give him a hand. So the installation is much, much quicker than really the elicitation. Because once we know what to do, and the important thing is having some good choices to do, then it's just a matter of sequencing it, putting it together, accessing it, applying it, solidifying it. Theo? Let's get the mic to Theo.
If he had to know Spanish language, would he still access this state?
So yeah, because I know how to use the bad words in English and Spanish.
you know bad words in both languages.
People here will know the bad words in Spanish, even if they don't know Spanish.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Denise.
Would you please repeat that sequence? You said, first of all, you sequence it, then the installation pattern. Just quickly, you did a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, what you've done, you've gone and gathered your menu list. So now we want to just layer that in, and sequence it so that it puts me in the best kind of place, so that with all of this and this frame of mind, what we're doing is building up a energized frame of mind, a supercharged frame of mind, so that with this frame of mind, when that happens, I've got the right kind of frame of mind that can handle that. That can either ignore it or play with it or stay calm or de-escalate it or whatever I need to do, so that I just don't buy into getting my buttons pushed. That I can use my voice to talk about it and explore. Now, in diffusing hotheads, to go a little bit further, the next step in this is to come up with some great lines, so that when you're in the best state, now you can have the best kind of, because we're going to deal with it in speech rather than behavior. So one of the, and I've got a whole lot of them in diffusing hotheads, and things like someone gets upset. The people who push my buttons are not the strangers off the road, but the closest ones. Because we open up our eco boundaries to them, and we let them in, and then they also know, the sensitive areas. And so every once in a while, someone will get upset, and they're in a mood, and I'm wondering, where's this come from? And they may say, you just never pay attention. You're just not thoughtful. And it's like, well, because that pushed my button, because that's the most important thing I care about. So at that point, if you have a great line, if your first message is, yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. I'm not. Then escalation. But if your first line is, I must have missed something. I must have missed something. And this isn't really important to you. This is more important to you than I realized. If you'll give it to me again, if you'll help me to understand this, then I'll pay more attention. And talk about diffusing. Because we're not escalating. It is verbal judo in the sense that we're taking the energy and playing with it instead of resisting it. So one of the things you may want to do is give yourself permission to have someone else notice a flaw. That's one of the things I've done with I give people permission to notice my flaws. Because if you don't have permission to someone notice and say, then the very saying will push buttons. But if you're okay with it, if you're okay with your close ones recognizing some flaw and saying so, and then the great line out of your mouth is I missed something, or I didn't recognize it that way. Help me to understand, instead of defensive lines, then uninsultable. So that's where we're going with it. Jim, let's get.
A story comes up for me that is a pretty good illustration. I guess it could be used in my lines or also even sleight of mouth, but had to do with a very tense moment in a domestic battle here in the States. The police department was called to come in and to find out what the situation was and how serious it was. And it was one of these hot nights where going in, and most police officers look at this kind of duty as the most dangerous of all kinds. And the information that they received is that there was someone with a gun holding to the head of his wife, and the neighbors had reported this. And so the police department walked up, and just as they came up the stairs, all of a sudden the television set came sailing out of the window and crashed into all these pieces on the floor. And the police officers went up and banged on the door, and the guy screams from inside, you know, "Who in the hell is it?" And there was a female officer that was there, and she said, "It's the television repair company."
So is everybody ready to meditate yourself with the resources for uninsultable? Do you want to become uninsultable? So your buttons aren't pushed, and we'll unplug those buttons and create that. So do you have your menu list, or at least a beginning place to start doing that? So 10 minutes each for uninsultability. How did that go?
It was a good exercise in maintaining state with all the distractions.
Well.
You know, the boats on the water, people flying by.
Okay.
It worked.
Okay. Okay. Any troubleshooting with that pattern as to anything that you need to become more uninsultable?
One thing that came up for me was the idea of losing that adrenaline rush of like, and my partner here suggested one thing that I wanted to put in was humor and amusement. He said, well, you know, transfer it over there. So that worked well.
Okay. Okay. And that took that adrenaline rush out.
Right.
Okay.
Because I thought I would miss that part.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. So you can still have emotional energy, but it just won't be a different kind. Okay. Good.
Adding to what Gary says, that I used to be addicted to that adrenaline rush because it gave me a lot of resource, and I mean it was like very much for strong force that I connect with. But I learned that I even was more resourceful if I connect with a higher level of my being, and but you know, it took some time in order for me to get that shift, and I still now sometimes I have the need for that, you know, adrenaline support.
Okay.
And that I.
So isn't it interesting that we can enjoy our body being in some kind of state, like an adrenaline rush state? We can enjoy it, and then not only enjoy it, but give it meanings that value it and support it. And of course, what we're doing is creating that matrix around that one thing that then makes it harder to give up, because we may even start doing some self-definitions around it. That this is part of how I define or experience myself, and of course, all of that just solidifies that. And so, to me, it's interesting how we build little matrices of frames and beliefs and understandings and values around something, and that's what holds it in place. And because that's how it works, we can use that same dynamic to build matrices around something else to hold it in place. and in this instance, uninsultability.
It's interesting because I worked with Gary, and I've also worked with some Vietnam vets, and I've read this somewhere else, but I've also had it relayed to me that other than sexual encounters or experiences, that violence or arguments or intense anger is probably as tense a relationship as you have with another human being. So it can be very state-dependent and very addictive to that you really feel alive in that kind of experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's interesting that you point that
Speak
out.
up, sir.
It's interesting that you point that out because, well, I live in Venezuela, and we have a president that uses that strategy all the time. He comes from the military, and he's very confrontative. He confronts everyone, and the more adrenaline he gets, I mean, the more he gets expanded. And people in Venezuela, we tend to, get in resonance with that state, and we say, well, look, he's a macho, and he go for it. And he has charisma, and I can rely on him to conduct the country. I mean, it's terrible, but I mean, at one level you can really empathize with him, and he is the leader, and it's interesting, socially speaking.
Okay. How did uninsultability settle for everybody else? Do you have permission to go there and to be there? Resources for how to do it? The test will come probably within the next day or two or next week, and we'll test that. And if you don't immediately go back there, that's just feedback for how to keep refining it and refining it until we can become the kind of people who, when we don't need to escalate things or be closed and defensive and reactive, we can choose to be open and exploring and turning what could be something that could turn into a fight into something that explores new possibilities. And of course, that's what we're trying to do, so that with our personal genius state and the people we interact with, the people we are presenting it to, when people irritate and obstruct, we have a resource for handling it. The next resource, and we're going to add several, but the next one I want to focus on is feedback. If you're in the place where you can take whatever is offered to you and turn it into feedback, and that'll be the key, turn it into feedback. With feedback, and this is page 52, with feedback, sensory-based feedback is easy to receive. That's why, as a general principle, you can say anything to anybody if you use sensory-based language and get by with it. And the converse is also true. You can say almost nothing to anybody if you use non-sensory-based language, if you use evaluative language. So we're in a meeting, and a number of people around a boardroom, and we say that, well, something pushed John's buttons, and he stormed up and insulted us and slammed down his book on the table and stormed out. Or we could say, I noticed that John seemed to be getting into an unresourceful state because his neck started bulging, and it looked like a lot of tension in his face, and suddenly he stood up very quickly, and he put the book down with a slam and walked very quickly to the door. Because when you describe, and it's descriptive, and it's sensory-based description, you can say almost anything without insult being taken. But when you start giving it meanings, well, John blew his cool in the meeting, John acted like a fool and treated us like idiots. Or John blew it again. When you use evaluative terms, you can almost say nothing and get by with it. So when people offer us feedback, when they offer us their perspective and response, and if it's not descriptive language, it's hard for us to receive, and our task is to get them to translate it into sensory-based. But you have to be in the best state. You have to be uninsultable. You have to be open, curious, not closed, not defensive, but really curious and wondering and okay enough inside so that we can then invite that description. We call that meta-modeling. we say, well, specifically, in what way specifically am I a son of a bitch? and we're really just curious. Yeah, sometimes I probably come across that way, probably come on too hard, too strong. How have I come on too strong with you or with someone else that obviously is not settling well with you? And when we ask for their feedback to be turned into description instead of evaluation, when we offer description rather than evaluation, so that's the distinction that is so important, and that is a different logical level. One is primary state level, description, see, hear, feel. Can I videotape it? Can I make a movie of it? And if whatever someone is saying, you cannot representationally track to the movie theater of your mind and make a representation of it, then we have to ask for specifics. Now, this is where it becomes challenging as we ask those indexing questions. Now, when and where and how. Because if you come on too strong with those meta-model questions, it can feel like you're drilling someone or doing a district attorney to someone. So we have to soften it. We have to be careful that way. But what we're essentially doing is trying to get them to describe. And if we're not reactive, well, you can't use that word. Well, I didn't do that. And if we're not reacting, then we can just keep, okay, and specifically, how did you experience that, or what was that about, or what did you actually hear, and we can stay engaged. So in giving and receiving feedback, and this is on page 52, when we receive feedback, and I want to do receiving feedback first and then giving it, because that's where most of us are challenged at. And so one of the first things we want to do is just to explore what's the matrix we have around feedback first, and then to deframe some of those, to slay or tame the dragons they may, and separating the person from the feedback and the style of the feedback, and then reframing that feedback as valuable information so that we can have a good relationship with that. So this becomes something that is going to really enable us to become more skilled, more masterful, more elegant, if we can receive that kind of information. So the first thing is this a desirable state to step into? To receive feedback for how you're coming across, what you're doing, how effective or ineffective, efficient, inefficient something is. Are you willing to receive feedback? Because if you're not willing to receive feedback, then the pattern's not going to work. So the intention of, yes, I want to become better at receiving feedback and handling it, and being okay with it, and in fact exploring it, and in fact using it, and in fact using it so that it can allow me to tap into my personal genius better. So that willingness to receive feedback. Once we are ready to do that, then we can go through this pattern of receiving feedback. So feedback enables us to see if what we're doing works. I mean, that's the most basic definition. It enables us to find out, is it working? And so feedback. Who would like to have more skill and everything with feedback? And I'll work with you up here. We'll go walk through this pattern. Who may be challenged with feedback? Jim? Okay. This is page 52 in your manuals. And feedback. As we start, gauge yourself from 0 to 10. If you were to gauge yourself on how well do you receive feedback now, where are you? I've done this pattern again and again and again. And when we do trainers training, this is something we do a lot with because we do a lot of shaping. Shaping is a process, and how we do it in trainers training, if you're interested in ever doing our trainers training, is we have people do stuff like get up and make a presentation and so forth, and then we as a group provide feedback to shape. What I really liked about this person's 5-minute, 3-minute presentation was his or her use of space, or the fact that their hands seemed congruent with. And so we go through giving a lot of positive feedback. Then we ask the question, what could this person do to take it to the next level? Which I think is a great question that's looking for negative. What could this person do to take it to the next level? So we get that information. And then I'll ask that person, whatever part of this information you want to take and integrate, I want you to do it all over again right now. Make your presentation, your 3 to 5 minute presentation, all over again right now using it. So we use that immediate feedback. Now, Sterling's been through this. Mike's been through this. And we shape. And one of the things most people have to get over is, but I'm not motivated to do it, because they all know it. And yet, we have not had one person who they took the feedback and were shaped with it, made their second presentation or their third. We've done, the last couple times I've made people do it 5 times. And every time it gets better, it gets better, it gets better, and everybody is more impressed. The person on the inside doesn't feel that, but how it's coming across. And that's that distinction between how I experience it on the inside versus how it's being delivered. That shaping, that feedback, and that reception. So that is one of the reasons it's the worst person to ask if you're good about receiving feedback is you. The best person would be your mate. The best person would be your associate. How am I at receiving feedback? And then we'll get it. And most of us, in spite of how much we know that we need that, there's still that fight with it. At least I find it myself still, even though I know how important it is. And so this pattern seems to me is really a pattern that allows us to settle easier with ourselves so that we really can receive feedback. Feedback. As you think about feedback and receiving it, first thing comes to your mind.
Well, I'm very cautious, and I know this is contextual.
Okay.
So some places I'm comfortable with it,
okay,
and how it's presented, but like the thought of getting up here sometimes has been, well, let's see, what are they going to say, and all that. And when I'm in the situation, I'm usually better than when I'm sitting back there, so I might hold up my hand, cautiously.
Okay. First thought that goes on in your mind when you think about receiving some feedback. What's the frames that you first default to, whether you even like those frames or not?
Well, the first thing is there's a reaction here.
Okay. Kind of takes your breath away.
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Something about danger, I think.
Okay, that somehow it feels dangerous. Do you have a sense of what it's dangerous to?
No idea.
Okay. Somehow to you, somehow your sense of self, your reputation, what people think, somehow it's dangerous. And so that's the first thing we want to do is to look at some of those current frames, what you think about that. And what would you call the state? What state does that thought and that feeling, that taking the breath, what state does that put you in?
Trepidation.
Okay, trepidation. And how intense?
5, 6.
Okay, so fairly strong state. And when you're in the state of trepidation, what would be some of the expressions of that state? How do you behave? How do you think when you're in that state? So that goes into that cautiousness.
Yeah.
Okay. Is trepidation for you, is that kind of connected with fear?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Apprehension? Okay. And so that, it sounds like it's part of the fight-flight kind of thing.
Yeah, probably pretty close to that.
Or stress.
Yeah.
When you get some feedback that's negative, does it then become even more intense?
Usually, let's see, usually I haven't really considered feedback as negative.
Okay.
So it's the thinking about it more than
anticipate. So not when you're present.
It's in anticipation.
It's just all the anticipation.
Yeah, the anticipation.
Okay. Well, step 2 is deframing some of these old frames so that especially the frames that would lead you to be closed or defensive, to deframe those kinds of things. As you step back from that, as you think about, you know, that anticipatory trepidation of receiving feedback, does that enhance you? Does that
No.
Very clear about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that doesn't serve you at all. That doesn't empower you, enhance you. You don't need that. How easy or how difficult is it to say no to that, to dismiss it?
Oh, it's very easy. I don't need it. I don't even, more than that, I have no place for it.
Okay. Do you have permission to set up a new frame so that you're open to feedback?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if you go in and say, I give myself permission, there's nothing holding you back from going there.
No.
Okay. If, when you do the exercise, if the person says, yes, there is, then just welcome those dragons, welcome those awarenesses. What is the voice? What is it saying? And then bring them into awareness to see how you need to reframe them. You may want to ask the question, when you bring it in, do you need to take counsel of this voice? Because the voice may be, well, what if they make fun of me? What if I get embarrassed? And when you bring that in, do you need to take counsel of that? Do you need to pay attention? Is there anything of value there? And once again, most of the time the answer is no, not really. So just like we can say no and dismiss it, bringing in the voice, say, so this voice needs to be dismissed. You really don't need to pay attention to it. It really offers nothing of significance to you. Then we can go to step 3, which is as we separate feedback from the person and the style of feedback, as you think about somebody giving you feedback, and maybe someone close, maybe someone you care about, maybe someone whose opinion you respect and honor, what I'd like you to do is to imagine that the feedback, what they say to you, is different from them. They're more than their feedback. That what they say and their opinions at any given moment is just an opinion and just a feedback, and they may change their mind, and they're more than that feedback. And how they give that feedback. Because sometimes people, especially close to us, don't take a time to breathe deeply and get into a calm state. They just throw it out, and sometimes it can be, succinct and pointed and
sometimes not so elegant, huh?
Maybe not so elegant. But they're more than their style.
Yeah.
They're more than
that's good distinction. Yeah.
Because sometimes they're grumpy. Sometimes maybe some button got pushed on them, and they give us feedback, and it's good feedback we need, but how they gave it to us, they gave it in that irritable way, or that irritable tone of voice, or that volume that we don't like, or whatever. And so by separating person from feedback, so that we focus on the feedback as something valuable while honoring and appreciating the person. Is that easy to do in your mind, to separate person from feedback?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
And in relation to this, I think it goes back to growing up and my dad was very harsh.
Okay.
So I think I got patterned that way.
Okay. Is that still your reference point?
I think that's what it is. I didn't know what it was till I got up here, and focusing on that, I can make a distinction.
Okay. So by bringing it into awareness, you can now separate that this is not your dad. And even if someone uses a style that might kind of remind you, it's not your dad.